All right, welcome back to another edition of Collector's Market Watch, where we talk about all things Lorcana from a collector's perspective. That means chase cards, sealed product, and promo cards. And just like that, it is over. Reign of Jafar has come, and it has gone. I think at time of this recording, set championships are supposed to be wrapped up with LGSs, etc. Might still be a few trickling in, I'm not sure. But there is nothing left to do now but look forward into the future. That is Fabled, and that is rotation. The clock starts today. We're going to talk about that and so much more. But y'all, you know what I'm going to say. Before we get into it, it would mean so much to us if you would consider scrolling down and hitting that subscribe button. We do pack opening content on the channel every Sunday and Thursday, and Market Watch content on the channel just like this every Tuesday. Also, make sure to go join the Discord. Link is down in the description. We're still showing a bunch of different spoilers from Fabled. So much other fun content. Go join that as well. And y'all, with all that out of the way, let's get into today's episode. And I feel like to start the last few episodes, maybe 3 or 4 weeks in a row now, I am constantly starting with a new promo that's been announced. And that honestly warms my heart. Promos are kind of low-key one of the most fun things I get to talk about on the channel just because they're so unique, right? There's so many different ways to acquire them, etc. And we have a beautiful new promo that looks like it just came out here. We have our Bell Accomplished Mystic, which obviously we see this absolutely beautiful border art here. And we also see this new rarity symbol right here. Now, from what I understand with this card, this is going to be what we call a quest promo, similar to the cards that we saw last week from the cruise ship. Kind of had that weird little ship logo on it with the waves, you know, from Azure at Sea. Very appropriate, very on brand there. Basically, you have to go through and do certain things and check certain boxes, whether that's trade or play, etc. And in exchange, the powers that be who are giving out these promos will hand you a promo as a reward. And this one looks like it's going to actually be one that comes through from what it's looking like is going to be called a Mythic Places, or I'm sorry, a Magical Places promo card, meaning like you can pick them up at certain Disney parks, etc. So it's going to be the same look, same feel, same theme. Where you're going to go, you're going to do certain things at a Disney park, and in reward, you are going to get a card that looks just like this. Honestly, this card is a fan favorite from an artwork perspective. I know that I still get asked to use it as my playmat promo. I know that was always a fan favorite when I used to do all my pack opening content with that mat. Maybe I'll bring it out for old time's sake, but this card looks absolutely fantastic. And what else I love about them kind of introducing these quest promos, these Magical Places promo cards, with this new logo and this new rarity symbol, which I love. Y'all, from a beginning standpoint with really anything as it pertains to not just a hobby, but like really the infancy of anything. It could be a business, it could be anything. You want to start by casting a very wide net. You want to go extremely wide so you have the ability to reach out to your market to see what they want and see what is speaking to them so that you can continue to hammer that. I think at time of this recording, and I promised myself I wasn't going to count live as I'm actually like doing this, but I believe to this point we have 17 different rarity symbols. I think. I could be off. Someone let me know in the comments. But you have the 5 like normal black borders from common to legendary. And then, of course, we're going to start going epic, enchanted, iconic, the double triangle like original promos, the infamous, or I guess now famous D23 promos. You also have the one-of-ones like the Gen Con, the Gamescom, and the Spiel Ascend. And then, of course, you have like the participation promo, the set championship promo, the Enchanted promo. And now we're starting to get into the Magical Places promo. And I believe it's I don't even know what the other one, the cruise ship promos, I don't know what we're calling those, but I think that's like around 17 promos, right? Or 17 rarities. So super wide net that we're starting to cast with the rarities, which is extremely, extremely positive for the hobby. And honestly, hopefully we continue to see more and more rarities that kind of continue to pop up. However, I do think hopefully going forward, we kind of set and forget the rarities for a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the episode. I don't want to give too much away, but I absolutely love this. I think it's a fantastic, fantastic idea. I believe that this came out as information from Gen Con back about a week ago or so, a handful of days ago. But of course we do Market Watch content once a week. So you're kind of at the mercy of like when these things come out, right? So, super exciting to see new promos come out. And speaking of Gen Con, we now have actual data and trackable information on the Gen Con promos that were released at the most recent event that I believe at time of this recording was about, I don't know, a week and a half ago, something like that. So we see our Goofy Emerald Champion Looks like it's coming in at a pretty fair price here. It looks like we're starting to see trackable data on this card. It looks like we have about market price around $30, but at the same time, looks like you can start to pick your goofies up for like $26, $25, $24, like, kind of hovering in that mid-20s range, something like that. Again, at time of like 2 weeks ago, you saw like one or two hanging out there at like $100, and this is exactly what we talk about, right? Just the constant steep drop off of that FOMO from the first 1 to 3 weeks, maybe even beyond. Wouldn't shock me if this continues to go lower in price. And I would say that if you are someone who really, really values your dollar and really values like getting the best of what I would call getting the best of the number, this card inevitably will drop down lower in price because there will be another critical event that will come out when Whispers in the Well comes out in November. That is the same artwork and same print as the Goofy Emerald Champion. I believe that comes out in rare, which means that this card will drop down just because from a gameplay standpoint, it's easier for game players to acquire, and that still is the vast majority of the market in Lorcana. So, I mean, look, $26, $25, something like that. That's nothing to like shake a stick at, but at the same time, if you are somebody who, says to themselves like, I would love to see this get under 20, etc., to be able to like, again, get the best of it, it's not a bad idea to hold off, and you'll probably continue to see it hover down in price a little bit. Same exact thing with the Pluto. Tried and true. Looks like this one is a little bit slimmer in price here. We see we've got like mid-teens here, like 13, 14, etc. The biggest reason for that most likely is because this card was acquirable a couple of weeks before the America's Gen Con happened. I believe that they did some sort of promotion. Someone let me know in the comments. I'm not as plugged in on what goes on the Europe side of things, but like, I don't know if there was like a con in Europe where they were able to then, hand out this promo, but somewhere they were handing this out. I don't know if it was in certain LGSs, like who maybe got their hands on this, if there were certain promotional events, things like that, as opposed to like one massive, like, Gen Con where you like, bring in thousands of people into like one convention center and start handing out these cards, so on and so forth. But the card was accessible, weeks before that. So you just have more time for this to bake in, similar to the Ana Icebreaker, which we talked about, which again, you were able to get it in Europe as well. That promo was also in Gen Con, at Gen Con a week and a half ago. Probably won't really talk too much about that card, but again, those three cards now accessible, trackable data on them, and again, we will start to probably see them continue to slide down. However, I do think that the heavy FOMO has probably come and gone, and at this point now you're kind of just jockeying for, again, the best of the numbers. So the Goofy and the Pluto, great to see that we actually have trackable data on those. What else we will continue to have trackable data on is going to be the Jafar High Sultan of Lorcana, the set championship promo that you can win, of course, from finishing top 8 within your set championship tournaments that you play at your LGSs. Figured it'd be a good time to maybe talk about this card one more time, just to at least be able to sort of give us a sunrise to sunset on this card. So once again, as we see, like looking at just from a 1 month perspective, just absolutely plummeting in price. Not surprising there at all. I believe when we first started talking about this card, we were talking about this card in the mid 40s, like 44 to 48 range, and now again starting to get mid to high 20s. And honestly, if you go through and look at like recent price data, you start looking at like more sales. Like the further I go back here, like I'll just keep going, like we'll go until, see, now here you start to see stuff in the 40s pop off, stuff like that. And as I go down, you'll probably see some more similar again, like 40s. So again, as we go up here and as we start to get higher and higher up, we start to see that you start to go lower and lower, because more set championships are happening. More of these are out in circulation. And once again, we're not doing 4 anymore. It's not top 4 like the Rockstar Stitch, Ursula Sea Witch Queen, so on and so forth. Like now you have, again, from the Mirabelle on, you have the top 8, right? I would say from the perspective of like, how is this going to work as we jump into rotation format with Fabled, etc., and we start to see things like Maleficent Monstrous Dragon, etc. I do think you could see Maleficent maybe try and hover in that like 30, maybe even 40 range. We'll have to see if it's still a prevalent Ruby card. I would assume that it is. The tack is very stark on it. Like it's specific tack that's just like, it's always going to probably be useful in any type of like trading card game, and it's an inkable card. I understand it's a high cost, but it's inkable. So I know that they're trying to, and this is where, again, I'm probably going to start to swim out too deep, but like I will say, like it sounds like they're starting to incorporate way more stuff like song related with Ruby and singing and stuff like that, and that's not really where Maleficent plays, but at the same time, it still will probably continue to be a meta relevant card in some capacity. Whereas the Jafar High Sultan is just like kind of not, right? You're ink locked into the Amethyst Steel, and it just doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? And it's uninkable. So really cool card, really cool artwork. I do think you'll probably continue to see it trickle a little bit more down, similar to like the Goofy. However, there is not that critical event that Goofy Emerald Champion has where like there's going to be another print of it, at least not that we know of right now. I mean, again, you could very well see it get reprinted. I don't know if they're going to do that though, because it is a set championship promo, and I don't know. It's already kind of oversaturated enough. Like there's theoretically 3 different variations of this card, right? There's the super rare from Reign of Jafar, there's the participation card, and then there's the Enchanted promo card. So I doubt you're going to see much more of this. It was actually really interesting. I think I was watching, or I was reading an article in TCG Player. I forget who wrote it, but the guy does great work. Love reading his stuff. And he talked about some ways that could be incorporated like into set championships to kind of like bring about extra health to the hobby. And I'm all for anybody who's got an opinion on that. Like, I mean, anybody, whether it's good, bad, in between, like for the powers that be to hear all of these ideas and start plucking the best ones to try to create the healthiest hobby possible. That's what's up. Like that, like we want that, right? And most of what he said, I was just like, man, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. Like, things along the lines of like, every single card theoretically, and maybe it was just the legend, maybe it was just the rares are better. I forget how he worded it specifically, but like there needs to be more epic rares. Like every card can have an epic rare. Like if you see a card that's a super rare, theoretically you can pull that card in epic rare. Cause like why not? It's like it's not a different artwork, right? It's the same artwork, just with that top borderless sort of Disney 100 sort of vibe to it that we're about to get with with the epic rares like the Max Goof and the Ariel and all these other, and all these, the Elsa Snow Queen and all of these others that we're about to get, with Epic Rare. Love the idea of that. And then he also called out the idea of like, instead of doing just a participation card and an enchanted rare, enchanted promo card like you see here with Jafar, how cool would it be to have like participation card and then like top 8 or something? I could be misinterpreting it here, but you'll get what I'm saying. Like top 8 gets like an epic rare of the Maleficent or the Jafar. Top 4 gets an enchanted promo version of the Maleficent or the Jafar. And then top 2 or the winner gets an iconic, promo version of the Maleficent and the Jafar. That one, I love most of it. I do think though, when we talk about the iconic rarity and we talk about what it's going to mean for the future of Lorcana, at least the short-term future, like I really do think from a rarity standpoint, I think the team probably did a very in-depth analysis of like, what is the best thing that we can do to make the rarities go spread out, but not too spread out enough where we can go wide and deep enough where the booster boxes become a little bit more healthy, right? There was so much talk about how, basically like if you ain't pulling an Enchanted or Maui Shark or Tamatoa, you're in trouble with your box, right? You take a big fat L, right? And so they did, it seems as though we're about to, embark into almost a rebirth of Lorcana, right? Where we're going to start to get in a much healthy booster boxes, right? Where it's like, if I pull a really hot legendary and an epic, really solid epic, I might make most of my money back. Who knows, right? And so like that's how you start to get much smoother, broader, like, I guess I would just say health within the hobby. I think with the iconic rarity, we want to be really careful with how we treat this rarity because we have an opportunity to really set the stage for that sort of high watermark of the spectrum of a collector. Until this point, when you talk about like collectors coming in from different walks of life, like other TCGs, sports cards, shoes, like whatever, right? Like if you just love to collect in some capacity, right? Like if from a Lorcana perspective, it's basically like the first edition D23 promos, the golden serialized Mickeys, the whole new world promos from Worlds, like that's kind of the market right now. And that's fine. Like the hobby's only been, around for 2 years, right? But at the same time, we now have a retail version of that where we're going to be able to, again, bring in that high watermark collector because, again, we want to be able to have a wide spectrum from a collector's perspective. When I think about the iconic rarity and adding to it, I want to be careful to have that not be the best example I can give to parallel it would be if you don't follow Yu-Gi-Oh, this might be slightly lost on you, so I won't ramble too long, but like the Starlight rarity from Yu-Gi-Oh, where at the beginning, like basically if you pull, like that was like 1 out of every like 8 9 boxes. Like, if you pulled one of those, you don't even have to see which Starlight you pulled. You are making money. Like, you are absolutely hitting big on that card, right? Then when the 25th anniversary came around, they started just oversaturating the market with Starlights all over the place that had that stamp on it. And again, you almost devalued the rarity from that perspective, right? So we want to be careful with these iconics that we don't start going like, you know, iconic promos and things like that. We just start like throwing this rarity around all over the place, because I know it seems early on right now, we only have 2 of them that you're going to be able to pull. But at the same time, like, you know, after a year, we're going to have 8. Right? You know, 4 sets a year times 2 is 8, right? After 2, we're going to have 16. After 5, we're going to have 40. After 5 years, we're going to have 40 iconic rares. Realistically, like, you would imagine they're going to be 3 to 5 boxes where you get, you know, you pull one somewhere in there, like, so like mid $100, something like that, that will appreciate over time. That will be a really, really solid chase for your high watermark collector. But at the same time, it won't be so unattainable that the average collector can't sell a few things to go get an iconic that they really, really want. Feels like a really solid price point, and one of the things that has both game players and collectors alike so unbelievably excited for Fabled, right? Where I think like some of it was at least, you know, just slightly sort of sobering, right? Where it's like we have 33 new mechanical cards. It's like, you know, that is sobering, but at the same time, it's like we also have to respect that game player side of it to make sure the health of the game stays intact, right? I mean, it's important, right? However, you still are able to offer the collector up something from the 2 new rarity perspective, from the epic and the iconic, and especially the iconic with what that might entail with the hot stamp logo and stuff like that. Like, you can do so many wonderful things with it to really make the collector really feel like they have a special piece of history. You want to be really careful with that, where realistically we're probably, like I said, going to sit with these, how many did I say earlier? 17 rarities, you know, probably for the foreseeable future. They might mess around and add a few more different kind of promo rarities, like the magical places, you know, rarity and stuff like that. They might mess around a little bit more with that. But I do think from a retail perspective, this is probably where we're at for now. So we need to allow the market time to like breathe on this a little bit and like see if it is something that is actually going to take effect. Lorcana just celebrated its 2-year anniversary a couple of weeks ago. I think Gen Con was the 2-year anniversary of it, right? So like after 2 years, you know, year and a half and change, we start to kind of see, okay, this is what works. This is where, you know, we might have gaps, epic, iconic, like we probably need some new rarities, right? We need to allow the market to breathe for another couple of years. But overall, like I said, like I'm nitpicking one thing, but at the same time, I do think like the iconic rarity, while it seems like it's so new, so early, like we got to give that time to breathe. So I am excited to see what they do with it. And again, I would love to see more excitement on the set championship side, because I think the set championship side, to the writer's point, he nailed it. Like, that is where the collector and the game player, that's like the one place where they can come together and kind of share commonality with the idea of like the game player would love to have an Enchanted promo and the collector would say, wow, an Enchanted promo, that's so cool. So totally get it, totally feel it. But yeah, anyway, I'm super excited to see what they do with the iconic rarity. Want to shift gears and start to talk about cards from a Fabled perspective that have the ability to maybe from a meta perspective be a little bit bolstered. When you talk about an Enchanted and, so on and so forth. So Hades Infernal Schemer is going to be the first one. So, I think as we go down here and look, we've seen that this card has done absolutely nothing but just continue to roast in price for the last month and even into the 3-month perspective. Average market coming in over a little bit over $20 right now. But this card was in the dumps for a while, man. Like 6-7 months ago, like a while back ago, this card was just your average, like $5 to maybe $10 legendary from the first ever set of Lorcana printed, which is almost criminal. But now we've seen it started to pick up steam, and a lot of that has to do for a couple of different critical events. The first being that ever since Arcasia's Island came around, when you talk about like Big Tamatoa, Happy as a Clam, Sapphire, like cards like All Is Found, etc., cards from the Sapphire perspective really taking hold in the meta. Sapphire has just become such an explored ink in the last 3 months or so, that you start to get new tack, like a Hades that sees success, and it's able to start raising in price. The second big critical event, this one's going to be a little bit earlier. Instead of like 3-4 months ago, it's going to be more like 3-4 weeks ago, where you start to get like these teardrops and these tea leaves and sort of these spoilers start to hit like the static waves of Reddit and things like that, you know, from folks who are really plugged in on the inside, saying things like, it looks like, from a reprint perspective with Fabled, a lot of the first chapter legendaries are going to get reprinted, right? And that could include something like Hades. So then you get to see sort of the clock get sort of reset from a rotation perspective on Hades. And so when we think about the Enchanted rare here, again, and I just want to start out by saying like the actual rarity there, it looks absolutely sick. I love that they have this new sort of like identifier on the rarity. Like it's almost too difficult to call out right here, but like if I go like really deep in there, like you can almost see here that we have like these little like, I don't even know, they're almost like grainy little things on the actual rarity symbol. And I think they have them on the legendary as well, certainly on the epic, and I'm sure on the iconic. I believe that was done to be able to prevent fakes. I'm not 100% sure on that. I haven't done too much reading on that. If someone's plugged in on the comments, let me know on that. But I absolutely love what they've done with that. But at the same time, yeah, absolutely. From a Hades, from an Enchanted perspective, same exact look and feel where it's like, if Hades, from a meta perspective, is going to be a solid sought-after card to help bolster your Sapphire deck, then the Enchanted Rare is going to see that. It's going to see that meta premium, right? No different than, again, cards like so many that we've seen in Reign of Jafar, basically Into the Unknown excluded, like, right, like cards like Lilo, etc., that have been so good from a meta game. And then before that, you see like the big Tamatoa, etc. Can you imagine if Maui Shark had an Enchanted Rare? That card would be a joke. That card would be like easy 250 plus. It'd probably be right where Tamatoa is. So this won't be that, like, but it will probably clear that $100 threshold just because it's meta relevant. Same thing as opposed to, you know, who knows? Maybe it'll clear one. I'm not sure. Like and there's also a little bit more to unpack with that as well, because like, as we bring in iconics and epics and things like that, who knows how the Enchanteds are going to go? It's possible that the ratios could adjust per case, etc. So we'll see how that goes. But again, if it is meta relevant, it continues to be meta relevant. I would, you want to, from a collector's perspective, be very careful to just be grabbing that, especially in the first month as you couple the meta game with the Fabled FOMO and stuff like that. So just be very careful with that. Same exact call out with Dumbo. And again, you can almost see it right here. Obviously that stamp looks a lot different than the old legendary stamp. And some of that is just because it's also, I believe the stamp is just foiled now. But again, having sort of that identifier logo in there, super slick move from them, like really slick. And honestly, like if that was the intention to disable the fakes, like, or at least like put up roadblocks, like bravo to them, because man, that is like really slick. But we do see Dumbo. I mean, I think we have like one, like we have one listing here. Don't buy that. But at the same time here, it does look like, they are predicting that Dumbo is going to be a card that is potentially used in the meta. And I'm going to go to the Enchanted just because it's just absolutely phenomenally gorgeous. But no, I mean, the tack seems like, again, you're talking from somebody who is, swimming in a very shallow pool from a game player perspective. Tack looks like something that will absolutely be used from an Amethyst perspective. Low cost, inkable, draw, like lore accelerating, seems solid. Like, I mean, so anyway, from a Hades and a Dumbo perspective, these would be like my two front runners to be able to be out in front of saying, like, you're probably going to see them have that X% premium because they're extremely played. So just be on the lookout for that, like, as we start to see Fabled, like, as we start to see, like, pre-sales trickle in and things like that. Like, don't be surprised if you do see these, like, start. Again, everything's going to be overpriced with pre-sales. Like, so, like, when you see something for $350, like, you take that absolutely with a grain of salt. But don't be surprised if you do see Hades and Dumbo be a little bit higher than some of the others. Again, that might just be you really beautiful Enchanteds, but might not be sort of as hyped from a meta perspective. But anyway, the final thing I want to call out as it pertains to those cards is it is possible that we will see them start extremely high. However, and we're going to find this out at the rest of this week, and we will be back here a week from now talking about this, I have no doubt, and kind of because we will have that final landscape of how the Enchanted market has shaken out and kind of the entire Fabled market in general, because we're about to see the release of every single card. I believe at time of Friday. right now, obviously watching this on Tuesday, I think by the end of Friday, you'll see that we have every card announced, as well as all the enchantments. And speaking of the enchantments, if you notice here, like we do see that we have our enchantments here that have been announced to date. Interestingly enough, though, and actually I want to see if I scroll up here if I can find this. Yes, I can. Okay, so when we look at the enchantments, we see here that it looks like right now where we have the most work to do in terms of like adding in different inks, it looks like both Steel, which has 1, and Emerald, which has 0 announced right now, are kind of our big ones that we still have to be announced. Emerald Steel was all the rage the last few weeks here in the meta and has seen a lot of success. Again, just somebody tracking it no different than I would track sports highlights or, like world news and stuff like that. Like, of course, like I do track competitive Lorcana, and it does look like Emerald Steel has been something that has been very, very strong in the meta, kind of almost succeeding Sapphire Steel. If I didn't say Emerald Steel, I meant Emerald Steel. Succeeding Sapphire Steel. And we still have a lot of that to be announced. And so right now, of course, we're still living in the Reign of Jafar meta where we have a very wide meta. However, with what is to come from an Emerald and Steel perspective, with the enchanted rares, that could bring about a much more narrow-laned, much more concentrated meta. It is possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it is possible. So that also could affect, prices of cards like Hades, Dumbo, because at the end of the day, the game players will set the market. If a month from now, all I'm hearing about is how Amethyst something is going crazy. Most likely Dumbo is going to be a crazy expensive card. Same thing with Hades, right? So we will have to see how that shakes out in the meta, and I'm super excited to see it. But y'all, that is going to do it for this week's edition of Collector's Market Watch. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, we will see you all on the other side.